Hello and welcome to Anatomy of Us, a show dedicated to bringing real help to real couples. I'm your host, Melanie Studley.
What's up, guys? My name is Seth Studley. I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, and together we are high-performance marriage coaches.
We are cutting through the bullcrap and creating a movement of happy, healthy, badass couples all over the world.
Let's go!
All right, Studleys, what's going on?
Let's do it. Hey, man. How's it going? It's good to see him again.
It's good to see you too. We've been chatting a lot here lately.
Yes,
I know. And I really appreciated it because you're cool. You do cool stuff. And we're like, let's
And
do
we've
more
got
stuff.
cool stuff coming up. That's the coolest part.
That's right.
Yes, we do.
It's all cool. It's all rad.
You know, what's really amazed me. And by the way, for those of you guys in the audience, so we, the Studleys, way cooler name than the Hagners, by the way, I'll say that. And the Hagners have gotten together and we are doing a Power Couples Retreat Summit in Orlando, Florida, on July 28th and 29th. And by the way, I've been posting this on social media, and I don't know if you guys have gotten this feedback, but oh my God, it's about time. That's like some of the feedback that I've heard from the people. So that's cool.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
we have excellent audience crossover. Your people are our people all the way, which is just so much fun. This is going to be the coolest event.
It'll be pretty rad. And that's really reaffirming too, like giving people what they wanted. But sometimes we don't even know what we want until it's laid out in front of us. And I find that some of those experiences are the most powerful. Like, oh man, I didn't know I wanted that or needed that. And thank God I invested in it and did it, because now my marriage is better, my body is better, my mindset, all that stuff is better. So yes, Power Couple Summit 2023, Orlando, Florida. It's coming up, and we're gonna talk about it a little bit and how we came about it. And by the way, Larry is on our show. We're sharing this show, so Anatomy of Us fans, meet Larry Hagner. If you haven't already heard him, we've done a lot of shows together, but he's back. So, and this is rad. So we're super excited to dive in.
And Dad Edge audience, I'm having this is a swap, right? So this is the Studleys on our show. So you're listening to it as well, which is really cool.
Yeah.
I love it. I wanted to we talked about this a little bit before we started rolling, but one of the things that I wanted to share was, why are we all so passionate about marriage? Like, why are we even doing this? What are we taking the time for? Why do we care enough? If that makes sense. And do you want to start,
Why do
Seth?
we give a dang?
Why do we give a dang?
Yeah. Well, I, as a licensed marriage and family therapist for about 15 years, obviously I've seen hundreds and hundreds of couples and spent tens of thousands of hours in therapy with clients. And man, if your relationship isn't right, your romantic relationship in particular, if it isn't right, it is hell.
Ain't nothing right.
No, seriously. And the research talks about that, like actual scientific literature, not just, Google research on that stuff. And I know all this stuff well. It's your quality of life is way better. Your health is better. You live longer. You add years to your life when your relationship is life-giving and when you are able to do something for your spouse. And we've seen, all of us collectively have just talked to too many couples where their relationship is just headed downhill, headed in a direction that they don't want it to go, and they don't know what to do. So first of all, we've been there. We've been there before. I'm sure you have too. Like, man, what is going on with our relationship?
Did your wife also give you a black eye?
She did not. She does. She never beat me, which is good.
Don't tease me.
I know, right? But I will say this, the why behind it, I agree with everything that you guys said. And in fact, I think that if you have a healthy marriage, it's this domino effect of beautiful things that will happen in your life. So, I think it was Bedros Koulian that told me this, which was, show me a fulfilled business owner, I'll probably show you a man who has a fulfilling marriage. Show me a dad who's fulfilled, probably has a fulfilled marriage as well. That's not to say that there aren't relationships out there that aren't meant for each other. I think that that's safe to say, but I really think that if you have that marriage on point, that relationship on point, that the world, especially from a guy's point of view, the world feels like a much better place. As far as me and why marriage is so important, I think the Dad Edge audience knows my story of not knowing my biological father my entire life until I was 30. My mom was married 3 times. I saw devastating relationships constantly, very abusive relationships constantly. When I got married, I was like, okay, I'm going to do this different. This has got to be right. This has got to be good. And to be honest, like what I realized early on, Seth, I probably would have spent, out of the tens of thousands of hours in your office, I probably would have made up half of those. Because like what I could tell you is that when I had this drive and motivation to be like, hey, I'm going to make my marriage work. It's going to be a good marriage. But having a template of what not to do, or all these things that have like, okay, like I know I'm not going to make all these mistakes, that wasn't nearly as enough as what I thought. And I didn't even know what good looked like. And, statistics have really shown this. I know in the Miracle Morning for Couples by Lance and Brandy Salazar, they mentioned this poll or this study that was done of the 50% of people that stay together. So everybody knows divorce rates, like I think it's edging up to like 51%, but the 50% that stay together are really divided up into these three separate camps and almost equally. So like the first camp, the first 33% of the 50%, not to really whirl your mind on math, but they actually are like, hey, our relationship's working, right? It's pretty much everything I wanted it to be. I'm happy. It's great. Like I really wouldn't change a lot. And there's a common denominator that they found with that first camp. The second camp is like, it's okay. It's not everything I want. There's probably a little bit of resentment. There's not really a whole lot of closeness. There might be some intimacy. There might be some sex, but not a whole lot. Needs aren't really getting met. The communication isn't the best. And then the third camp is the worst. That's like, we're divorced, but we're married, which they have no connection whatsoever. They are completely living individual lives under the same roof, and nobody wants to be in that camp. And what I can tell you is the common denominator that they found with the couples that, really are happy together is that they both realize like, hey, number one, this is not always going to be easy. I have to grow, right? We have to grow together. We have to learn new skills. We have to invest in our relationship. We have to, whatever that might look like, but we have to grow together, and we have to be a team, and we have to have intimacy, and we have to be on the same page with parenting, and we have to constantly communicate over and over and over again, and to have this growth mindset as a couple. And versus, what a lot of people do. And I think this will scare a lot of married couples out there, but in a good way. A lot of us, when we have kids, right? And everybody listening to my podcast, they've got kids, and I'm sure the same with you, is that when I become a parent, now that's priority number one, and my spouse is priority number two. And what I think a lot of people forget is that our kids have a front row 3D, 4D, maybe even interactive movie and an example of the relationship that their mom and dad has, right? So a young man will learn how to love a woman by how his dad loves his mom.
Right.
A young man will also learn like, what does mutual respect look like? And girls too. What does mutual respect look like from couples? A daughter will learn, hey, how my dad loves my mom is how I should tolerate how a man is going to love me, right? So they've got like this, our kids have this front row seat to our relationship, and we can either make it highly functional, right? And communicate and conflict resolution and love each other intentionally, or they can be like, okay, so my parents had a mediocre marriage, or they didn't really have a great relationship at all. So that's what marriage is. And that's what I'm going to do. So I think it's really important for people to remember.
It's absolutely important. And I thought about a billion things when you were saying that. But number one, when we're talking about our kids seeing how mom and dad interact with one another, more is caught than taught.
Yeah.
Right? Like I can talk to my kids, my boys, my daughter all day. But guess what? Until they see me doing these things and maybe seeing me go to the gym, maybe seeing me wake up early and, read my Bible and study. And I could talk about that stuff all day long. Do you think that's going to teach them anything? They'll just have the knowledge of like, okay, well, yeah, I guess that's a good idea.
Well, it makes me think of that. Like we go to what we know. So like if you think of this, like if a dad or a mom is like, you need to always be respectful. You need to always be respectful. And they say that to their kid, but the second they get out in the real world, they're cussing at the person in the car. They're saying, well, that guy's just an idiot. So what you're modeling for your kid to follow is the behavior that they're going to go to, not what you tell them to do. Right. And I thought of another, like also Seth and I tapped each other's legs at the same time, which made me laugh, but then I didn't want to laugh because it seemed rude, but I was trying to say
it means I want to say something. No, you say something.
But what you said something that really, I think is so important is that most of us never get the roadmap for marriage or relationships. Long term, we don't have that roadmap. And so what you were saying, sort of like seeing your mom have these relationships over and over and over, all it did was teach you what not to do, but that's like having a map that tells you where not to go.
Mm-hmm.
There are so many options of where to go that you don't even know where should I even point any of this stuff? And so for me, that's part of the journey of why we do marriage work, why we're so passionate about it, is that the resources for it are so hard to like piecemeal together. There really isn't someone saying, hey, this is going to work the best for your temperament and your spouse's temperament and the life you want for your family and your kids. Here's the roadmap to create that. But you have to, as a person, have to have like healing and support and community and tools and resources to even make that happen.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know, something that you said about like, all I knew was what not to do, but that does not enough intel to know what to do, you know?
Yeah. And so going back to the last 33% of the 50% that get married, like you're, again, the maths, right?
Right.
If we went to a job, you know, that was similar to like the last 33% that you're talking about, I just go there. I don't talk to people. I hate the work. There's no windows in my cubicle and I get 30 minutes for lunch and it just sucks. How long would you stay with that job? You wouldn't, right? You absolutely would not. Same thing with the car. If it like broke down more times than not and the heater didn't work and you're freezing in the winter, you'd be like, I got to get a new car, man. This is ridiculous. And what people don't realize oftentimes is, well, I got married. Isn't that good enough? Like she should know that I love them. I bring home some money or I do this or I cut the grass or something like that. No, you have to invest in your marriage, which brings me to my 3 points of why people should come to the Power Couple Summit 2023 in Orlando, Florida in July. Is the number one reason: invest in your marriage. Because let's just do kind of a round robin. Like, tell me, each of you guys, what have you invested in? And this could be finances, the stock market, your home, your body, your marriage, your kids, anything. Just pick one of those. Tell me something that you have invested in, and the dividends from that have far outweighed the sacrifice that you put into it. Just real quick. What have you invested in?
My mastermind that I'm in, it's a huge investment and it has huge dividends.
Right.
And that's, I mean, you get what you pay for.
Right. So
in that case,
you're paying to be in the rooms with other people who you want to be like and learn from, right? Okay.
In business. Yeah.
Right. Okay. Larry, what about you?
I would say health has been a huge investment of mine for years, you know, as far as like, I'm always having somebody teach me, you know, a better, you know, healthier things that I could eat, healthier things that I can do. I even had an experience here recently where I took my 15-year-old on a rite of passage in your neck of the woods in Oregon, and I injured myself. I ended up tearing a quad and had no idea, but had gotten away from like a trainer for the longest time and fell into some bad habits and really some really poor technique when it came to training my legs. And I didn't even know it, but I was training my left side way more than my right. And part of the reason I tore my quad was because of those muscle imbalances and also my mobility. So I neglected that. And so when I went back and I had to go to physical therapy. So there was a cost, right, to not doing that, which was I got hurt. I was out for 8 weeks. I had to go to physical therapy. I also had to go to an orthopedic surgeon because they thought that I might have torn a ligament too, but I didn't, thank God. But I went to this personal trainer who specializes in mobility and balance and core strength and all these other things. And he was like, dude, you're a mess. He's like, you know, physically you look good. He goes, but you're a mess. He's like, we got to get these imbalances straightened out. He's like, otherwise you're going to be back in here in a few months re-injuring yourself. So, you know, I think that you need to be proactive, like when it comes to these, but for me, it's been health, but even like, even some of those things, like I could have been more attuned and more specific when I did it.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I want to point something out about that before you answer yours. I know I'm cutting you off, but like, even with you, Larry, like you on the outside, you look like you're in great shape, right? So I wouldn't know that you have imbalances. I wouldn't know that. And so I like to overlay that with relationship stuff. Like even in our own relationship, it's like, even if something is a tiny bit off, but the rest seems okay, that one imbalance can cause like a rupture or a huge problem. So it's like, it's constant growth. It's being a lifelong learner in relationships, in marriage. And I want to say so much more, but what have you invested in?
That was great, Larry, because you gave 2 examples. You gave the price you had to pay for not investing or not being aware of the imbalances and stuff. And now you're 8 weeks out, you're laid up and you can't work out, you can't run, all this stuff. And then also the sacrifice, like taking your 15-year-old to Oregon, you know, like, the time, the money, the investment. And I guarantee you that your relationship with your 15-year-old is better because of that, right?
Yeah.
Like that's going to have lifelong implications for him. Yeah, when I was 15, my dad did XYZ, right? So I'll tell you one that happened yesterday, the example. So our middle kid has been really into mountain biking lately. And when I went and got all my kids' bikes, he was the only one that didn't want one.
This was like a year ago.
About a year and a half ago. So he didn't want one, right? But he's really been getting into it. And we have amazing trails out here and all his buddies. I was like, okay, let's do it. So we found a really, really nice mountain bike and went and got it yesterday. And I kind of surprised him, right? And I promise you, Larry, like all day yesterday, he would just look at the bike and then look at me and go, Dad, thank you. Man, thank you. And he even did it this morning. It's in the garage and he went and checked on it. You know, I'm like, how's the bike, man? He's like, man, thanks, Dad. So it's just one of those investments, which I promise you that will have dividends because now I have a bike and we're going to plan on doing trails and stuff like that. So that is going to be more time for him and I, right? So the point of that is investing. When we invest in something as big and life-changing as our marriage, you will, I promise you will get benefits from it. And it's like, we know the importance of investing in our finances, in our career, in education, in our body. But oftentimes we overlook our marriage, right? And you have to have skin in the game. So coming to this summit is an investment. And plus, it's freaking Orlando.
I know.
And it's at the Hilton Orlando, too, with a lazy river and cabana and pool and all this stuff, right?
My favorite lazy river.
Well, we were there. We spoke at Podfest Expo last year and hung out and lazed on the river, and it was awesome.
If you can't find me, that's where I'll be.
In the lazy river.
In the lazy river.
Right.
You'll actually be doing a workshop from there. All of us will be on our inner tubes, and
that's brilliant.
That's actually really good. We should
give me a really good idea.
Guaranteed that's never been done before.
Lazy river workshop. Well, it makes me think of too. There's what is that? Shared experience is like part of the thing that is necessary for long-term relationships to be fulfilling is you have to continually invest in shared experiences. And most people kind of like, you get past marriage, you get past the wedding, you get past the kids, and then you just ease off on everything. And that is not how we're wired. And so I think even just from an investment and connection perspective, the shared experience that you will gain from going to Orlando with us is huge. Like you can't measure.
Well, that actually goes into point number 2. Like, okay, point number 1, this is an investment in you and your marriage, which in turn has dividends to affect your family positively, right? And number 2, connect, right? So like we talked about, it's Orlando, the sun, the pools, the spa, all this fun stuff that's in Orlando too, right? If you haven't been there, it's really fun, trust me. And going into the shared experiences, like I think about shared experiences that I have had and the camaraderie that I've built with other men's groups that I've been in or sports teams like in college or high school and stuff. Those shared experiences are bonding experiences. And to get into the therapeutic psychological part, the shared experiences you have with your romantic partner, that actually produces bonding chemicals that go, oh, wait a minute. We haven't had a time like this in a long time. Do you remember the steak that we had on that super romantic dinner? Or do you remember how we connected when we heard Seth and Melanie and Larry talk about sex and intimacy? Oh my gosh, that was awesome. Do you remember the sun, the hotel? Man, that was awesome. And here's a trippy thing that I really like saying. When we do things like this, we are creating our future memories, right? So when you do something like this, that you have such a powerful shared experience, you are creating a memory that you will look back 1, 2, 3, 5 years down the road and go, man, when we invested in our marriage that way, it really changed a lot of stuff. I can think of half a dozen conferences or not conferences, but retreats that you and I have gone to.
Oh, yeah.
You know, like the one in Colorado, some down in LA, all over the place. And we can look back on those and say those were really pivotal moments in a whole constellation of a bunch of pivotal moments where we changed, where we bonded, where we grew. And guess what? You think we forgot about those things? And those were like 5, 6, 7 years ago. No, we still carry those today, and now we get to teach the lessons. So, number one, invest. It's worth the investment. Number two, connect in these shared experiences. You want to go to number three? You want to riff more?
Well, I'd love to just talk about connection real quick because, so we've been doing our own private event, Data Summit this will be the 5th year. And I've been to many conferences, and we've hosted a few others, outside of that as well, like these rites of passage for father and son and that kind of thing. And the connection piece is really, really pivotal. And I think a lot of it has to do with, we call it a productive pause. Where you can connect. So like, for instance, if you're out of like we're podcasting right now, I'm still in my house. My wife is like literally in the next room. My dog is on this couch, right? I still have a phone that's sitting on the desk over here. But when you are in an environment that is not your own, you're then out of your daily grind, right? Where all you have then, so like, for instance, like the rite of passage that I mentioned with Mason, like we had no cell phone service. All I had was him and the other 8 men that we were there with. When you're at the summit, you're emerged into that event, right? You're away from everything else. Same thing is said for this. Like we can connect under our own roofs, right? But at the same time, when you are taken out of your everyday environment, right? And you are actually put into what I would call a beautiful environment. Yeah. We're going to be, I've been at this Hilton too. One of my best friends got married there, and I was the best man, and it's a beautiful place. But when you're there, I really think not only do you have this productive pause where you're off the grid, and now it's like our sole focus is each other, and to connect with each other, and to learn different skills with each other, and to connect in a way that perhaps maybe, our lifestyle and everything going on, the kids and practices and food and dinner and grocery shopping and all this other stuff, you're away from all that stuff. So the connection piece really, I think, goes to a whole new level. The final thing I'll say about this is that events are not just, and especially this one, events are not just like, hey, it's about the event. We go to the event ends and done. The event is actually really a launching pad for beautiful things to happen after the event, right? The event is only like the event for a launching pad purpose, right? But you can actually leverage these productive pauses in these events to like, okay, and I still do it even with rites of passages with my kids, where we'll refer back to like, hey, you remember when we were facing this, or we talked about that, or hey, remember when so-and-so was talking about, your friends and how they're going to be tempting you with drugs, and all of a sudden, boom, like now it's happening. Like, so we talk about it. We're always referring back to those times we connected in that place, and it becomes a launching pad for, an elevated relationship.
Right. I want to say something. I know you tapped my
leg,
but I'm going to say something. So I think sort of speaking to that, one of the things that we hear all the time for people who join the groups that we lead is that they're just desperate for a community that is empowering their relationship, that's positive, and that wants them to win. And one of the things that I think about what you do and what we do, and then again, what the Power Couple Summit is going to do for marriages specifically, is put you in rooms with people that will probably become lifelong friends. Your kids will probably know each other. That's what happens in these groups. But you have this community of people who want you to succeed. And so many of us, I know in my own personal life, like outside of the groups we've created and that we are in, I don't have people that are like cheering my marriage on. I have people that will maybe complain about Seth or say that we're dumb or whatever, but I don't have anyone that's like, yeah, I know it is hard to be married, but you
those
can
folks
do this.
don't last long in the circle,
Right. But I just want to like reiterate this idea that the connection that you make, and I've heard this because again, we do have a ton of crossover in our listenership. So I know people have come to us who found us through you, and they go to the summit every year. And they are like, Larry's dudes are my dudes. That's how they all talk. They all say, Larry's dudes are my dudes. Just kidding. But it's just it's really amazing to facilitate and be parts of relationships like that, because they are game changers. Game changers. That's all I wanted to say.
Well, they really are. And we're all the sum of the 5 people we hang out with the most. And whenever I talk to people, whenever I explain that notion, which is not mine, of course, it's an old adage, people, if I ask them, hey, do you want to hang out with losers and just, dads that wear pajamas to the grocery store at 2 p.m. in the afternoon? No way, right?
Is that one of your groups? It's the dads who wear pajamas at 2.
Pajamas, yeah.
Oh, I get super judgy when I
know, Seth gets really mad about it. Sorry.
Like people at Walmart, right? It's dads in pajamas.
Right. And it's like, okay, that's not, those aren't my dudes, right? So if we're the sum of the people we hang out with the most, the 5 people we hang out with the most, then I want to hang out with high achievers, people that would attend the Power Couple Summit, people that would join groups like the Dad Edge or other masterminds, or dads who are taking their kids to Oregon and doing things like that, because you are going to be called, you're going to level up as well, right? And then so my third point here is like couples that come to the Power Couple Summit are going to improve their marriage. And if you're in a room full of people who all have the same mindsets of improving their marriage, what do you think the vibe, the conversations, the energy will be? Will it be an elevated, high frequency energy that is good for you and your spouse? Of course it will, right? So those are the rooms that I want to be in. And I have found, all of us have found, sometimes you have to pay. Well, most of the time you have to pay to be in those rooms. Like it's a privilege, right? If it was free, then everyone would do it. You know, if getting a 6-pack abs is easy, then everybody would do it, and it's not a thing. So you have to have skin in the game, and you have to, and we're going back to point number 1, you have to invest, right? So you're going to walk away from Power Couple Summit with tools, a lot of tools, and we can even talk about the planner here, with different tools, different interventions, things that you can do that evening, in fact, right? A shared vision exercise, the clearing structure exercise for erasing miscommunication with your spouse, the repeat after me intervention, all these things that Melanie mostly has created, and we've co-created a lot of them too. You're going to take those tools away and go, oh, that same argument that we've had 8,000 times, when we use something like the Power Couple Planner or the clearing structure or the same page exercise, wait a minute, that conversation, that argument doesn't last 2 hours until 12:30 at night.
Yeah.
It lasts about 10 minutes, and then we leave and we can hug each other and kiss and say, oh, I love you. You know, so awesome. So proud of you for the progress that you're making. So you will improve your marriage and you will improve yourself. As a therapist, I always say, you have to improve yourself first before you can bring that to a marriage. You know, if I want to give you $2 and only have $1 in my pocket, I'll never give you $2. So I have to go out and get it somehow. And that has nothing to do with your spouse. It's like you making the choice to improve and then bringing that back to your marriage. And that's what's going to happen at the Power Couple Summit.
I can't wait to go.
I know.
I was literally thinking, I was like, I'm inspired. I was thinking that as you were talking.
Well, good.
And I think
it's like,
too,
hey,
like,
I want to go to that.
Right. It's cool. It reminds me of the thing you talk about, like a serendipitous exchange, where it's like,
so hold on, let me explain what that is. So in my work with therapy, I came up with this term. It's called a serendipitous exchange. So something serendipitous is an event, a thing, or whatever, a thought that happened kind of unplanned, but you're like, oh, wait a minute, that was congruent with other things that I was thinking. It's serendipity, right? And so a serendipitous exchange, I found that through me doing work with couples and individuals, I was not only helping them, but I was hearing their experience, and they were helping me learn something about myself. So it's a serendipitous exchange, an exchange of value. You get something, I get something, but it wasn't necessarily planned out that way. So that's what.
Well, yeah, and
means.
so that it just made me think of that, because you get into these spaces with other couples, and you go, oh, they walked through that. Wow, they're on the other side of that thing that we are just starting to walk through, and they have wisdom, and so this really reciprocal feedback loop of like sharing wisdom, giving wisdom, sharing community, receiving community, like that is so powerful. That is how I believe we're wired as people anyway. And where do we get to do that for our marriage? Nowhere. It's only places like this, And again, marriage is such a fundamental part of a healthy, fulfilling life. Like if you're married and your marriage is bad, ain't nothing good,
Yeah, it's just not. It's like the crappy job,
Right.
It's like the crappy job.
I think marriage is, and I don't think a lot of people really refer to it like this, but if you think about it, so one of the guys who works for me, his name is Jake Herbert. Seth, you met Jake.
Oh yeah, he's awesome.
Jake is like America's wrestling legend, right? And I'm talking about like, so he won the silver medal in 2012, and he was 9-time national champion and all this stuff, and so he wrestled until he was 30 years old, right? And then finally after 2016, he was like, okay, I'm not going to go any farther with the Olympics, so I'm going to go ahead and retire. And now he's into real estate. And but the cool thing about Jake and like literally spending the majority of his life in the wrestling room with coaches and mentors and also fellow athletes and also quote unquote a community with like-minded individuals and athletes who all share the same vision, right? Who are elevating each other, pushing each other, want the best for you, that kind of thing. I actually flew Jake in to work with our high school wrestling program for a day to run a clinic. And he said something. He's like, I'm going to give you guys a quote. And he was talking to all the students. He's like, I'm going to give you guys a quote that will really serve you for the rest of your life. He goes, I had a coach tell me this when I was 12 years old. I didn't understand it at the time, but definitely do now. In your life, you need 3 people. And I'm also going to refer this to marriage. You need someone ahead of you who is where you want to be, and they're there to mentor you and help you. They've already paved the way of success and they've already hit the speed bumps, and they're going to point you in the right direction. So that's number 1. Number 2, you need people who are equal to you, right? So on the wrestling mat, people that you're going to practice with, that you're going to spar with, and that kind of thing, that you can practice moves with. They're better with you than some. They're worse than you and others, but someone who's equal to you. And then someone, most importantly, someone that you're mentoring. So the best way to learn is actually to teach. So always be teaching what it is that you learn. So let's talk about marriage in this way. So we don't normally open up the conversation. In fact, I don't know hardly anybody except for people maybe in your community and mine that really open up the door of their relationship and say, and take in like mentor another couple, right? And say, hey, we've been down this road. So like me and Jessica, I'll never forget when we first got married and we were having marital problems, and we were like hitting our head up against the wall. And it was her aunt and uncle. So her mom's sister and then her uncle that had been married, I think for, I don't know, maybe 15, 20 years at the time. They really just were giving of their time, and they would take us out to breakfast and they would talk to us as a couple, and the things that we'd always viewed them as like, oh, they've never had a problem in their whole life. But we had like this incredible relationship with them that they were able to share with us some of the struggles that we were going through and how they overcame them. And I was like, I literally felt like me and Jessica had so many aha moments just talking to them. They didn't even like, it was never anything official, like we were being mentored, or they just would just share wisdom with us and experiences and story. And it gave us like this really fantastic roadmap of, number 1, we're not alone. Number 2, like, okay, so it's actually normal to have some issues. Okay, great. So we don't feel like idiots. We don't feel abnormal. But most importantly, like, oh, so this is what we can do about it. Like, this is gold. Like, we don't have to try to figure this out anymore. Like, we can literally do this, this, and this. That's awesome. So, and still to this day, Jess and I are celebrating 20 years this year. We still look at her aunt and uncle. Like, we have this a bond with them that we don't have with any other relatives, which just like, that is the couple that probably like helped us save either a lot of time, frustration, or even our marriage. But Jess and I are now considering the opportunity to be a couple mentor in our church, because we're like, man, like we know this stuff, right? And we implement all the time. What would it be like to solidify this information even more in us, but also to give it to a younger couple who was basically us 20 years ago? How much would we have given to be like, can we just be mentored by someone who's been down this road, please? And versus you kind of go in the shadows when you're having just even the basic marriage stuff problems, right? You kind of go in the shadows of like shame. Nobody else is going through this. We're the only ones. We must be dysfunctional. We must be, maybe we're not even meant for each other. It's like all these crappy stories that we tell ourselves. And all of a sudden we have this like divider between us. And we're like, you both look at each other like, how do we even get here? Right. Versus like, if you have like you said, a community, or even just another couple who's just a little bit ahead of you, that can give you just a little bit of these breadcrumbs.
Absolutely.
Yeah. It's like healthy community is our safety net. And you're exactly right. When people go through really hard things, like when we were going through our hardest time, we literally didn't tell anybody because we were like, this is embarrassing. We're so ashamed. How could we be this way? He has a marriage and family therapist degree. Like, we're just the worst. We don't know how to do anything. So we just like pulled away. But again, I want to really encourage people that healthy, supportive, committed community is the answer. It's not a button. You can't just push a button and then it's fixed. You can't just like drink a magic potion and it's fixed. It's being in a supportive community. I mean, this is going to sound like a funny tangent, but like Some of our best friends are friends we've made through our podcast, which sounds weird to say, but it's true. So these people became friends, and we travel with them. They're amazing. And when we are in crisis, like if we're really struggling or if they're really struggling, we literally call each other and FaceTime, say, dude, I don't know what's up. Seth said this thing and I just don't know what to do. And I think maybe I don't understand it. So maybe we can figure this out. There is nothing that is as helpful as having loving, supportive, healthy community to be held up with and by. And again, but to also be helping them. So it's just a really cool, again, serendipitous exchange vibes all day long.
Yeah, absolutely. And that just goes back to, okay, who are you hanging out with? What couples are you hanging out with? Where are they? And so, okay, looking to the older experienced couple to shoot for, to emulate, right? And also to learn from, and then have your set of peers, like the people you were talking about, like, hey man, I need some help. What's going on? And since we're on a high frequency marriage level wise, we can trust that advice, right? And then looking to the couples who are in a different position than we are. In my case, obviously a lot of people come to me when they're in trouble, or come to us to come to coaching when they're in trouble, but also helping in that. And then also mentoring younger couples, I mean, geez, sometimes I see super young couples, married like 6 months or a year or something. And first is like, oh boy, man, I remember being there, number one, and also going, I can help them so much.
Right.
And give to them, like to pour into them. Oh man, I can help them so much. Learn from the mistakes that we've made, just pick up these little nuggets of wisdom and go, oh, run with this. This is what I wish I knew 10 years ago when I was young, dumb, and in love, kind of thing. So that's a good quote. Thanks, Jake, for sharing that. Thanks, Larry, for sharing that as well. So just to, well, go ahead, Larry.
No, I was just going to say, I think it's that, you don't have to, I want to encourage people on a couple of things. Number one, you don't have to be friends or associated with couples who are older than you, right? It's all about the experience. There are people who have been married, way less years than me and Jess that still help us out, and same for you, right? And vice versa. The other thing too, this is where I really want to encourage men, when it comes to my podcast anyway, or just couples, right? And that is, if your relationship is in a good place, this is all the more reason why you need to come. And I'll tell you, in my personal experience, and Seth, you can probably give me the psychological reason behind all this. I think it's a fact, but I don't know the whole psychological stuff behind it. But I always tell guys that, like for instance, we'll take guys who want to join our mastermind, the Dad Edge Alliance, right? And we've had guys who fill out an application, they meet with our team, and they're like, "No, things are going pretty good," and whatever. 6 months later, we see them, and we're like, "Hey, well, why didn't you join 6 months ago?" And literally, I can almost say it before they can. Everything was fine then, not now. And I'm like, and they'll always say this: "I should have joined then."
Yeah.
Right.
Because now it's this, this, and this, and there's a story behind it, right? And what I always encourage people to do is, if your marriage is in a pretty good spot, right? I would even say mediocre, right? Nobody's going anywhere. Or if it's like, hey, it's good, but you don't want it good. Like, I don't know about the rest of the world, but when people say, how's life? Fine. Well, you know what? I don't want it fine. I want it freaking outstanding. That's what I want. We weren't put on this earth for fine, mediocre, or right? We were put here because, like, hey, we've got one shot at this whole thing called marriage, relationships, all these things. I don't want to settle for fine. But what I'll say about that is if it's in a good place and you want to make it great, it's all the more reason, because when it's already in a decent place, this is like a freaking catapult into greatness. Because if it's a 911 situation, and this is the comparison I always compare it to, if it's a 911 situation, like you have a plug and there's a spark, and you're like, I'll just wait till the house catches on fire. Right? But the plug sparks, you don't waste any time. You're like, that just sparked. I'm calling the electrician. Oh, that's the problem. Okay, cool. You come out and fix it immediately. Thank you. Great. Okay, off. Done. When your house catches on fire and it's a 5-alarm fire, and you are desperately grabbing your family, grabbing your wedding photos, grabbing all these things of value, and you are screaming, you're on the phone with the fire department, please get to my house as soon as possible. My house is going to burn down. Please get here as soon as you can. That type of mentality is not going to be best suited for, I just saw a spark. I need to address that. So like, I always encourage people, for my audience, the men, like if it's in a good spot, that is actually your best time to learn. And
Exactly.
it's time to go to grade, because now if divorce papers are sitting on the lawyer's desk, well, now you're operating out of disparity and you're on the phone with the fire department frantically screaming for them to get there as soon as possible. And that's really hard to navigate emotionally and logically of what do I need to do here? Because all you're trying to do is like put the fire out. But I don't know the psychological reason behind that. But Seth, you probably do.
Well, I thought of a lot of things when you're saying, and there's a difference between reacting and responding, right? So, I mean, when we call the fire department or an EMT, what are they called? They're called first responders, not first reactors. Like, I have never been on the scene where the paramedics got there. Oh, Chris, what I do? That's not what they do, right? They're trained. They know, so they respond to it. They don't react to it. So oftentimes when the house is on fire, it's really hard to respond with a rational mind. In fact, we call it like, then we're thinking with our lizard brain, our brainstem. You know, we flip the lid. We're not thinking through our prefrontal cortex. We are only going, how do we survive? What do we do? How do I stop this pain? I don't care, right? And for most of us, we probably have not made our best decisions when our lids are flipped in that. For me, at least I can say that. But when I'm rational, when I'm thinking things through, and I can make an informed decision about it, I go, oh man, yeah, things are decent right now. Man, this marriage summit sounds cool. Okay, let's do that. And I guarantee you, of all the conferences, well, save for one when we were responding and things were really bad. This was years ago. All the conferences and retreats that we've been to was, hey, how can we make our marriage better? Let's do that. And we were on the same page. We were up for the shared experience, and we went, and it was amazing. Yeah,
and I think part of one of the beautiful parts about that is that it gives you this space to get on that shared sort of mindset frequency with your spouse, that nothing, like you said, it's like a pause, but you said something cooler, like an intentional pause, something. What'd you say? What'd you call it?
Productive pause.
Yeah, productive pause. And I think that I can imagine, I'm just trying to put myself in the shoes of the women who would maybe want to go to this, and like what they would say to talk themselves out of it. Because I think that it's really important to address like how people will be like, oh, well, you don't know my husband, or you don't know my marriage. That's not the point. We don't need to know the details. We are creating healthy communities surrounding you, giving you tools and resources and support and all of that to help level up. And I wanted to also kind of point to what you said, Larry. Like, I didn't come here to this planet, because I'm from Mars, just kidding. I didn't come here to have a mediocre marriage. Get out of town. But I want to have the best life possible. And that includes my marriage. And if I can have an amazing marriage, think about how much better it will be to parent my kids, or how much more fulfilling of a life I can build if I can get that foundational, fundamental core element of my life really dialed in. I mean, again, we cannot understate the power of a bad marriage and the power of a really healthy, helpful marriage, you know?
And guess what? We all have the agency to improve upon that. Just like if I'm 100 pounds overweight, I have the capability and ability to do something about it. Now, it's my choice, right? It's the action taken. And so speaking of that, I just want to reiterate, we're talking about the Power Couple Summit 2023 in Orlando, Florida, July 28th, 29th. You're going to be taught a ton of stuff. You're going to hang out with like-minded people, and it's Orlando. We're taking our kids. We're going to make it a family vacation kind of thing to really optimize us being down in Florida. Trust me, you guys, it's going to be really fun. And we have early bird pricing right now. I don't know when this will come out, probably in a week or so, or maybe even sooner. But early bird pricing is going on right now. So you guys can go to powercouplesummit2023.com to get tickets. It's on our site. It's on Larry's site. Tons of ways you can find it. powercouplesummit2023.com. And I don't know if we're wrapping up, but I want to, as a psychotherapist, I want to give 3 reasons why people wouldn't come to this, right? 3 reasons. Number 1, you don't think that this will help your marriage. You're listening to this, oh, that's cool. I wish I had a marriage like Larry's or Seth and Melanie's. Or, well, they can do this because they have a podcast. That is the most bullcrap ever, right? Anybody can do it. But if you don't think that this will help your marriage, then you won't click the button, right? And then you're actually in a pretty bad spot. If you don't think that hanging out with other like-minded people, getting taught by people who have been in the marriage game for 20 years, let's see, maybe almost 40 years collectively, it'll be our 19th anniversary this summer. You don't think it's going to work, right? So that's the number one reason. Number two, you don't think that this applies to your marriage. You're listening to this, you're like, oh, you don't know my wife, you don't know my husband, you don't know what we've been through.
You know what I want to say to that?
Yeah.
You don't know how awesome the tools are that I have made.
That's
you
right.
don't know what we are going to bring to the Power Couple Summit. Now I'm fitting to get mad.
Yeah.
You keep on talking.
Well, it's true. You don't think it applies to your marriage, which puts you in a category of special. Right? Why wouldn't it apply to your marriage when it's applied to me and Melanie's marriage, to Larry's marriage, to our listeners' marriage? So if you think that you're special and you're in a different category, that might be an issue, right? Yeah. I'm just telling you right now, that's not true. And then number three, and I don't think this is the case because with most of our listeners, their growth mindset, they're like, hey, let's do this. You're not the decision maker. Like, you're like, okay, I would love to go this, but we've had fights about it before.
Like I could do it, but my husband can't.
My husband won't. But,
right.
And especially if you're a guy, which I know, Larry, you have more dudes listening, but I believe, and I know that you do too, Larry, Melanie does as well, that men are leaders. We are a good leader or we're a bad leader, right? If you're a father, there's nothing that's going to change the fact that you are the biological father of that kid. You can be a good dad or a bad dad, right? And right now you have the choice to do something to improve your marriage. But if you're kind of like not the leader and you're timid and scared, then you're not going to buy the tickets either. Of course, be on the same page. It's a big investment, going on a vacation, flying down to Florida. Of course, being on the same page, but I promise you, so many women out there listening to the show would be like, I would die if my husband said, I'm taking you to Florida at a luxury hotel. We're going to do other cool stuff and we're going to work on our marriage.
Like die with joy?
Do you know? No, and I'm not even, die with joy.
Okay, I was like, I don't know that.
They would be ecstatic, right? And I've talked to enough people where the guy wants to work on stuff too. And women, if you're hearing this and like you have that opportunity, I promise you, this is like a birthday surprise of surprises. Hey babe, I love you. I know I said no to therapy before. I know that I was wrong. I want to take you to Orlando. Let's do this. Right? But if you're not the decision maker, you're going to have a hard time for that. So this is kind of like where the rubber meets the road, you guys. Right. Are you going to do what you got to do to improve your marriage? You're going to take that chance? Or are you going to be like, I wish I would? Wisdom does now what we're going to be thankful for later.
I agree.
Right?
Yeah, I think we can coin a term here.
Yeah.
And I think we just go off the incredible impression, whether you meant to do it or not, when you were imitating the person who was trying to put out the fire. I want to call him, I'm going to call him the Beaker dude or the Beaker couple from the Muppets. You remember Beaker? Like when somebody goes, like, right? Don't be Beaker.
Yeah.
Don't be the Beaker dude. Don't be the Beaker couple.
Oh
like
they
be the calm, be like, hey, things are pretty good, but they could be freaking amazing, right? It's not the Beaker.
It's not called the mediocre couple summit.
No.
It's the power couple summit.
Yeah,
and
right.
it's funny because when I was so actually let's talk about some of the tools really quick before we wrap up. But like when you go to the Power Couple Summit, you will get the Power Couple Planner that we created, right? We created this from working with clients. This came from real world stuff where we had clients, we kept seeing the same problems over and over again. So I'm holding it up. Here it is. But we kept seeing this. Thank you. We kept seeing the same problems over and over and over again. And I was like, okay, I'm going to figure out a way to put this into like a planner because people need to plan for their success. It's not just going to happen. It's not just going to fall on their head one day that they're successful, because a relationship success is doing the right thing over and over and over and over and over again consistently, right? We need dedication and consistency. And so I made a planner. But I went back and forth on what to call it. And I was like, well, I want my clients to be power couples. So of course, like, why wouldn't I call it the Power Couple Planner, right? And again, the Power Couple Summit. Like, we want to call couples to their highest selves as a couple. One of the coolest things to see, now this is going to sound like I'm bragging. You probably have this experience with your wife though. It's so much fun to be a healthy couple and be out in the world and have people reflect back to you. You have a lot of fun with your spouse, or like even within parenting, like people will actually tell us, people we don't know, man, you guys have so much fun with your kids and like, you're so happy. You all seem so happy. You know how cool that feels? It feels amazing because it's true, but we didn't get it for free.
We didn't just roll off a log and get it.
No.
It's like with anything, Larry, I know you were a competitive bodybuilder. You just didn't do that. Oh, wake up and go to a show. No, you put in the hours. And this is one of the ways you can put in the hours by going to the Power Couple Summit.
And you're proud, like you can have something to be proud of. How many people can say, I'm really, really proud of my marriage. I'm proud of my marriage. That's like, people don't even think that way. But
oh, dude. And as a husband, guys, raise your hand if you're listening to this. If your wife, when your wife says, hey, honey, I've seen the work you're doing, I'm proud of you. Okay, close the book. That's it. That's all.
I agree, man. And I think I really want to hit on the point that this is more important than the couple, right? And you guys are illustrating that perfectly. But I think, the things that I want people to really understand that are unsaid. So like, for instance, I was at my in-laws last night for dinner, right? It was me, Jessica, and the boys. And I came up to Jessica, I kissed her, I hugged her, and I just whispered, I love you. And her mom goes, get a room. And I was like, I love hearing that. Like, I love hearing that. Like, yeah, I love your daughter. I love your daughter in front of my kids, right? To me, that was like the best compliment I could have gotten that night. Like, get her. And she kind of like laughed. She's like, oh my gosh, get a room here too. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And then I'll do things too. Like sometimes I'm like, do my boys know? I know that they know that, how much me and mom love each other. But sometimes I just kind of like, like I was sitting next to my 9-year-old and I kind of nudged him. I'm like, hey, I was like, you know what? I was like, I want to tell you something about your mom. And he goes, what? How much you love her? Because you say that all the time. And I was just like, I know I do, don't I?
That's like, so sweet.
But I just love hearing that. I'm like, the fact that he said it before me, like I want him to know, to see that, right? And here's the thing. I want to be real with the audience. It doesn't come without work.
Right.
It's not sunshine, rainbows, and unicorns over here all the time. Like there is work, right? And sometimes it ain't so pretty. That's okay. We know how to repair. We know how to recover. We've got that, what you said, Melanie, that roadmap. And that is, coming from, last thing I'll say is this, coming from a freaking broken home, over and over and over and over again. I remember how much uncertainty that I felt as a kid, how unpredictable my home and environment was. How like when I heard my parents fight or whoever she was dating or married to at the time fight, I was like, oh my God, hopefully this doesn't get bad. Or just hearing that, it's just like, man, it's just like, there is a better way. And you're right. I don't understand now that I've been doing this work for as long as I have. And Seth, I'm sure you're in the same, and you too, Melanie, but like, it's almost like, I don't understand why people expect that it's just going to work out. And you just because you wing it, because when it comes to things being successful, people don't wing success. I mean, Seth, you mentioned bodybuilding. There's so much freaking work and prep and like all these things you have to dial in just right. It doesn't just be like, yeah, I think I'll do that. I'll figure it out along the way. That doesn't happen. Same thing with any company and planning or anything that we do. It just doesn't like, yeah, we'll just fly by the seat of our pants and hope for the best. Like, why would you do that in the most important relationship?
Yeah. I love that you're saying that. So literally the quote on the back of the Power Couple Planner is, it says, almost no one is foolish enough to imagine that he automatically deserves great success in any field of activity. Yet almost everyone believes that he automatically deserves success in marriage.
Oh my God.
Isn't that
That's
crazy?
Crazy.
Yeah. And I look up marriage quotes all the time and really try to get like the ethos of what people believe about marriage is that love is all it takes. And we know that that's not true. And so we have to, again, there's nothing, if I could pull away one thing, yes, you're going to get great tools at this event. Yes, you're going to have a great time and you're going to be in the lazy river with me. It's going to be rad.
During your speaking.
Listen, I'll do it. I just need a lot of sunscreen. But the thing that I think is the most helpful is that you'll be gathering a community, even if that community is literally just your spouse. You'll be elevating the energy that you have around working hard for your relationship and putting in the effort that it takes. And that will make all the difference. Again, tools aside, you're going to get great tools. You're going to have an amazing time. But the community saying, I'm here to support you. You're here to support me. Let's grow together. Let's aim higher together. You cannot beat that. And I cannot, again, reiterate the massive impact that marriage has on everything. So it's generational. If my marriage is crappy, if our marriage is crappy, our kids are going to inherit that. They will inherit what we did not heal, right? We'll just plop it right on their head. So I feel obligated to work on my own self, work on my marriage, level up in all of those ways. And this is just one of those steps, like one of the investments that I would do and that we're doing and even putting it on, teaches us a lot.
Absolutely. So don't be the guy that goes, oh, this doesn't apply to my marriage. You don't know my wife or whatever. Or you're the decision maker and going to be like weird and weak and feeble. That's not a leader, dudes. All right. That's not who your wife wants. Trust me on that. I've talked to zillions of couples. So don't be that guy. Go to powercouplesummit2023.com to catch the early bird pricing. I think there's only a couple of weeks left of early bird pricing, but again, it's Larry and his team. It's me and Melanie and our team. We're going to put on an awesome event for you guys. You're going to walk away with some real different stuff. Your marriage will be improved when you come down to Orlando, July 28th, 29th. I'm stoked. I'm super stoked.
I'm just ready to party.
Yeah.
Bring me that lazy river in the sunshine. Listen, I'm out in Seattle. It's raining right now.
Love that. Yeah. I would just say don't be Beaker. Right?
Yeah.
This is the way to avoid Beaker. Beep, 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 beep.
Yeah. You're not going to react. You're going to respond. So we're calling the men especially to respond right now. Wives too, of course. PowerCoupleSummit2023.com. And we are super excited to see you there, Larry. And of course, a bunch of other couples.
Back at you. I'm excited for this. I mean, this is what the world really needs. If we can engage in beautiful relationships under our own roof, just imagine what's possible outside of that roof.
Oh man.
Love it.
So
it expands.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you for doing this with us.
Yeah. Thanks, man.
Back at you.
All right, dude. We'll talk to you soon.
All
right. See you.
Bye.
Listening to Anatomy of Us. This podcast is produced by my mom, Melanie Studley, and hosted by my dad, Seth Studley. Our show is edited and published by our producer, Reba Hansen, from Creative Media Support. Special thanks to our Patreon members that get an extra episode every week. Thanks for watching. Love you. Bye.